Good evening, everyone, and welcome to On Five Libraries Talking Menopause with Janey Godley. I've just got a few housekeeping items to mention before we start. So your microphones and your cameras will remain off, but I'm sure you will want to ask lots of questions to Janey and the panel. So please use the Q&A button that you will see on your screen. And for anything else, please use the chat. And if you want to take the chat to further afield, use the hashtag #EngagingLibs. So tonight is the launch of our menopause project, Pause Not Full Stop, where we want to encourage greater openness about the menopause. Our project is supported by the Carnegie Trust Engaging Libraries project, which supports public libraries to run public engagement activities on research within the themes of health, society, and culture. I would like to welcome our special guests, and we are absolutely delighted to have Janey Godley here. Now, over the past few months, I'm sure we've all heard the catchphrase, frank, get the door. So who better to start those frank conversations? And I'm terribly sorry, but I had to use that pun again. And now over to Janey.
Hey, thank you, Samantha. I like you using the frank, get the door. And hello, everybody watching. I know that it's really difficult, me doing comedy chat here and you guys are just watching. And literally there is nobody can let me know they're having a good time. I've got a picture of my late dad on the wall, an angry sausage dog on the floor. And for the first time this month, I'm wearing a bra. Yes, we have done it. So I just wanted to say hi, everybody, to start with. Talking menopause, you know, last night Ashley and I did a live stream where every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday we do a live stream on Facebook, and she sings a song, any sort of musical, and I Janey it. So last night she was doing, and I think it was supposed to be, I don't know what the word is, but the lead in was, and I want, and I'm like HRT, and I invented HRT, the musical myself through, you know, Defying Gravity was the song, but I made it HRT. I never knew that I actually had a menopause. I never knew I had one until I had one. That's the weirdest way that I can put that. Because people always have this sort of belief that the menopause is that women's vagina go funny and then they don't have their period and then they just spend the rest of their life screaming at men. And that isn't true, because I've been screaming at men for such a long time that it would be hard to know when that shit stopped and this started. So that wasn't a good identifier for me. And I think that menopause to me, it was so different when I was a kid. When I was a kid growing up in the East End of Glasgow, the word menopause wasn't mentioned. The word period wasn't mentioned. It was called your doodads. And I never knew what your doodads was for the longest time. But my ma used to say, you need to keep an eye on her. She's got her doodads. And I'm like, what the fuck is a doodah? I want a doodah. Get me doodads now. I thought it was like a character out of the Banana Splits or something. La, 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 here's your doodah. But no, it turns out it was another, because the word period was too difficult for people to talk about. And in a weird way, I never had my first period until I was 18 years of age, which is quite a late starter in the old womb ejaculation department, evacuation department. And I spent my whole life having the worst period pains ever. And I thought that was normal. I thought it was normal to feel as though a horse had kicked you right in the doodah and no complain about it. And I remember, I'm sorry, I'm just watching Colin's horrified face at this conversation. Colin, Colin's sitting there like that. I just want to talk about cake. Why is she still on about her fanny? So I'm going to slide you along, Colin, so I don't have to look at you. Sorry, Colin. But yeah, when I was a kid, I had the worst period pains ever. And I remember being like 20, 21, 22, thinking, I can't wait to get my menopause, because that, to me, a menopause wasn't a thing. It was just a date when your body stopped bleeding. So I kept thinking, I cannot wait for this day to arrive, because this is hell. And so bad was my period pains that when I was in labour with Ashley, I remember being in the very late stages of labour and the nurse saying to me, right, this is another big contraction. And I'm like, this is like period pains. I don't understand why everybody's green. And she was horrified that I had been suffering that pain for a long time. I'm not saying the labour wasn't sore, but I'm just saying sometimes it was as sore as what I had went through. So what I'm trying to say is I was looking forward to my menopause for a long time. And my daughter Ashley has the exact same period pains as I had. So menopause. I'm going to switch to some other people to see. Hi, everybody. I've got Fiona, Vanessa, and Susan there. How you all doing? So yes, this was the problem that I had, was I had spent my whole life looking forward to getting a menopause. And when I was a teenager growing up, they didn't have a menopause conversation. My mammy and her friends didn't have menopause issues. What they did is just opened a window and stood close beside it and let the cold air at them while they not fuck out a kid with a skull sandal, because God forbid, you know, they couldn't get all that. And it was just different times. There was just different times. My mammy had a whole lot of other problems, so our menopause was not mentioned. And it was just, woman got hot, woman stood near a window, and woman went walking at midnight. And I always think the song, I go a-walking after midnight. As a woman with a menopause, you just want a breath of air. I need some air about me. And that is what I think it is. Now, my husband has autism, so his body temperature, basically the conversation I want to get to is my husband has stole my menopause, because my husband has more hot flushes and sweats than me, and it makes me quite angry that his are treated with more. Oh, that's a shame, he's overheating. I'm like, excuse me, Big Billy the boiler is here. Could you all calm down? So our bed, if you can imagine it, that's my bedroom. The window is here. You're supposed to have your bed over here. Our bed is at the window. I can literally put my hand right out the window when I'm lying in bed, and that is wonderful for me. I remember Big Reggie Hunter, the American comic, stayed with us one time in the middle of winter, and we have an ensuite bathroom, and he came into my bedroom to have a shower, and the windows were open, and he looked at the windows in the middle of winter right above my pillow and went, you people are Norsemen. What I used Vikings. What is this? I'm like, oh no, we're Scottish, but we like the cold. So menopause for me was my mammy. My mammy used our menopause to get out of so many sticky situations. My mammy's long gone. She died at 47. She died a young woman who never got to fulfill her own life. But my mammy was a character. And I remember I thought about this for you guys the night, the first time I heard the word menopause. I'm going to flick to some other people. Hi, Julia. Hi there. So the very first time I heard the word menopause was my mammy using it to get out of so many scrapes. I know what you're all thinking. How? Let me tell you. My mum once wired the electricity from the street. We were really poor and terrible poverty. My mum had a lot of problems, and she wired the electricity from the street. I'm not laughing at that. I'm laughing at my mum. And she wired it into the house, and the police caught her, and she got charged, and she had to go to court. Now, this was the mid-70s, where every court was just all men in suits who all looked like they worked for Bradford and Bingley, or just men in suits. Now, I'm standing in the court with my mammy. I'm like 14. My mammy's in the sheriff court, and she's being charged with stealing electricity. She was poor. But I saw a wee glint in her eye, and I thought, oh God, she's got to do something. And the judge, sheriff, whatever he was called, said to my mum, Mrs. Curry, can you tell me why you did this? And this is my enduring memory of my mammy. All the men in that room, my ma went, listen, sir, I've had my menopause and quite a lot of discharge. That's it, fine, bye, case cancelled, everything. My mum mentioned the word discharge in menopause, and the whole case, the course was cancelled. They flung the case out of court. They were like, but it's fine, Mrs. Curry. My mum's like, no, you're not understanding. When I've had my menopause and I've had quite a bit of discharge, I'm getting quite a lot of pain round about my nipples. None of the men could cope with this confrontational conversation. My mum mentioned discharge, menopause, and nipples, and they threw a case out of court. And we got outside, and she picked up a fag, lit it, and went, see if you're ever in trouble. And it's men. Talk about stuff that comes out your vagina. They'll shut up quite fast. And so she got away with stealing electricity because of her menopause. And I think that's just a wonderful uplifting story for everybody. But I'm not saying you should do that. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying that was what, and anytime any of my brothers get into trouble and the police came to the door, my mum would open the door, they'd go, Mrs. Curry, about your twin son, I can't speak to you, I'm having a big flush with menopause and I've got stuff coming out of me here. My innards are coming out of me. Door shut, men ran away. Mama used the menopause as a buffer against society, confronting her with her misdemeanors. And I don't know anybody else that's done that. And I'm not saying she was right, but she dealt with the tools that she had at the time. And I think that's an important thing to remember. She used it to her advantage. Flash forward to my time. I have never seen so much shit flung at women to buy for their menopause. I never knew I needed accoutrement. I never knew I needed a special moisturiser, a special hair dye, or Gwyneth Paltrow's stone that you shove up your fanny. I never knew that I needed any of that for my menopause. I thought my menopause was a natural thing that will happen. My period will stop. I don't have the pain anymore. And then I might get a bit shouty apparently, but I've been shouty my whole life. What's new in this picture? And then apparently I'm supposed to get a dry vagina. No happened. Apparently my hair's all supposed to fall out. No happened. Apparently I'm supposed to, my nails will fall out and I have to have special treatment. And I'm like, I think women have been sold a load of shit about this. I'm using the same moisturiser I've always used. My makeup's no different. Do I need a different blend of eyeshadow for my menopause? What colour is it? Pink? I don't know. I think that there's a marketing ploy to be made. Women watching, beautiful Ruth there. Ruth, you're watching. You must know the shit that young women are sold about how to keep your vagina fresh and you have to shove flowers up it and stuff. Seriously, who is spraying flowers on their vagina to make it so? I don't know a man that eats flowers. I'm going to leave that there. Now, I'm just saying that women's vagina and their reproductive organs have become a marketing ploy for a lot of men that can sell a lot of shit to a lot of women that believe they need it. I never knew my vagina had a pH level. Never knew. The other one, and because I had a daughter, we had great conversations. I still remember the day my daughter came in and said to me, right, you need to know, she went, have you ever got a new credit card, Mum? I went, yeah. She went, you know how when you pull it off the paper, there's a jelly bit in it? I went, yeah. She went, that has just fallen out of my vagina. Am I going to die? Do I have an evil jelly tot? And I thought, no, that's a mucus plug. And she went, why has nobody ever mentioned the words fucking mucus plug before? This always goes down my leg and sticks to the back of my knee with my leggings, and nobody has ever mentioned a mucus plug before. She went, it's like one of those soldiers, toy soldiers, you stick the one, goes, why has nobody ever mentioned that? So she now talks about that in her act to younger women. She speaks about the mucus plug and why they're not to be frightened of it, and why mothers never told their daughters, see in between your doodads, a mucus plug will come out. That was never spoke about. So we now talk about, and then the other conversation, she says, Mum, why is my black knickers bleached? Is my vagina producing bleach? I said, no, that's normal. She went, it's normal, I have an acid-eating fanny. I went, no, look it up. So there is so much, even in my generation, my daughter's generation, we don't know, and especially about the menopause. And I haven't been to the doctor, I haven't spoke to the doctor, I haven't declared my coming out day of menopause to anybody. I haven't had a period in a year, so I assume I've got my menopause. That's the only symptom I've had, is that I've not, other than getting a wee bit hot and the screaming and the anger. But as I say, I've always had that, so that's no a symptom. That's a Tuesday to me. So I don't understand how I'm supposed to know the difference. But what I do know is the mythical and the generational and the historical greatness of a menopause is that minute women can no longer produce children, their vagina dries up, it becomes a bat cave, their hair falls out, their skin goes dry, they need to buy a special candle and they're executed from society. They go to the outer limits of the forest while the young ones draw on eyebrows make false eyelashes, and join TikTok. That's what I think people think menopause is. What I've discovered it to be is a wonderful, positive, embracing experience. I know my body more now than I ever did. I know more about my vagina and its workings now than I ever needed to know. And I love the fact that I no longer have to feel that I have to justify myself in the world and say, hang on, my menopause doesn't mean I'm finished. Why? Why would it? Nobody looks at my 60-year-old husband and says, well, he's not 60 until this year, so technically I'm a wee bit older than him and he's not let that go. But nobody looks at him and says, right, mate, that's you. Your role in the world is finished now. You can put on your special scarf, your cardigan with the elbow patches, pull on a wee bonnet, join still game look-alike competition, and then sit at the end of the bar and smoke a pipe. Nobody says that to him, but they assume the minute I am menopausal, I'm not sexual, which is rubbish, because seriously, I'm still getting banged harder than a faulty washing machine door, but that's another subject. Now, the point is, it doesn't make women worth less. I think it makes us worth more, because we have learned so much about who we are. Wait, hang on a wee second, just to check the time. I have to put a computer on because I'm no bright enough to buy a clock. Right, we're almost there. The point is, I think it makes women worth more. I think that our generation of women, all you women there, Ruth and Sarah and Sharon and Vanessa and Susan and Fiona and Julie, I think all the women there, we're a generation that can pass down this knowledge to our daughter's generation and not be afraid to say, well, this is it, this is what happens. I haven't bought vitamin supplements yet. I haven't bought any tincture. I haven't had any HRT. I haven't had anything yet because my menopause coincided with the year of COVID, which was, to be honest, quite a difficult thing for, I mean, it's like the fucking stars aligned. Let's make Janey's menopause happen while she's in lockdown with two people who have autism. Let's see how that works out. But we have got through it. And I am very proud in my reproductive organs. I'm very proud that my wee womb and my fallopian tubes and my ovaries produced a beautiful child. I'm very proud that it worked properly. I've never been embarrassed by the smell of my vagina, so I've never had to spray flowers onto it because it's naturally meant to be like that. I don't know if I'm shocking everybody. Everybody's faces are just staring at me going, she's not a comedian, she's an over-friendly cleaner with quite a lot of issues. But I'm very proud mostly of my mammy Annie, who taught me a long time ago how to get out of a sticky situation by saying the word discharge to a man in authority, and trust me, it still works. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Janey. That was marvellous. So now it's time to kind of open things up and start having these frank conversations. So remember, if anybody has got a question that they want to ask, please put it in the Q&A. But actually, kind of Janey just kind of started talking about there, and it made me think that obviously she was saying that, you know, nobody talked about the menopause at all. And I wondered if people had thought that had changed, you know, over the past few years. So has anybody in the panel kind of talked about menopause with people beyond their close friends?
Only so far as to apologise to colleagues when I've been raging. And I knew I was raging, but I didn't know why I was raging. There wasn't a good reason for raging, but I was raging. And I had to say, I'm sorry, I know why this is happening and there isn't a good reason for it, but it's happening and you've just got to put up with it until it finishes, sorry. So if the rage comes over you.
Yeah, then you have to. Oh, I think Fiona's got a hand up. Fiona, if you just take yourself off mute.
Yeah, so I work with a theatre company and we have a performance company for people over 50, and often, and we create performances around what people want to talk about and their ideas and their hopes and dreams. And menopause does come up quite a lot because it's mostly women who are involved in it. But it's never really reached the point yet where it's really come into our performance very strongly. Now, I don't know whether that's because people in the room are in denial or they just don't feel ready to speak about it yet. But one of the things I found with that, it was one of the things that Janey talked about, was that working with a lot of women between 50 and 80, what seems to have happened in our experience is that when women hit menopause, it absolutely knocks them sometimes to become somebody else in a good way and sometimes a bad way. So we've had feedback like, I didn't feel like myself for a couple of years. And I think that's so interesting, that idea about becoming somebody else or feeling like somebody else.
Hi there.
Yeah. Oh, I can just see, is it Susan? Susan, did you have your hand up as well?
Yeah, no, it's just interesting what Fiona was saying there. I certainly found, I mean, my menopause came on very suddenly after a hysterectomy. And it was the mood swings, which Sarah touched on there. You know, one minute you're up here and you're screaming at everyone, the next minute you're just sitting kind of crying into a coffee or a glass of wine. But also the hot flushes. You know, you'd be sitting in meetings and things and you're like, oh, is it really hot in here? Is it just me? Cardigan off, blouse open, scarf off, and then half an hour later it'd be scarf back on, cardigan back on, and all the rest of it. But definitely the mood swings for me. I mean, I think my infamous point was one night I hung a chicken at my husband and he was really upset because it was a cooked chicken that was going in the fridge for the next day, and I just launched it at him. It missed him, it hit the wall and hit the floor and had to go in the bin. But that's not me. I mean, I'm usually pretty chill. So it's really interesting, but I mainly talked about menopause, I would say, with close friends.
Right.
Although I did talk a lot. I've got 3 grown-up daughters and I have talked a lot with them to the point that they kind of went, that's enough, Mum, stop.
I think Ruth was next. I think Ruth had a hand up.
Yeah, hi there. Well, as you know, I do lots of talks on the menopause. So talk to loads of women, and it's very much, I think, just everybody has such a different experience. You know, there's 75% of us experience symptoms, and then you do have that 25% who, Janey, you sound as though you don't have many symptoms at all, but you do have that 25% who think, what the hell is everybody going on about? You know, they've got their pelvic floor intact, they've got their libido intact, they have no idea of the conception of feeling rage or having these mood swings. And that's a really important point to make, that we all do experience it really differently, and you might have, you know, a multitude of different symptoms, or you might just have that dry vagina. And it's having the confidence to, if you are experiencing loads of symptoms, to think, well, actually, you know, I've got these and I'm not being histrionic about it, and I need to get some support and care for that. Whereas at the other end of the scale, people just, if you haven't got any symptoms, you are so lucky, and just enjoy it. You know, you're really lucky, and enjoy it. But if you do have loads of symptoms, there's lots of different ways that you can cope with them, and that's one of the most important points to make, is find out all your different ways to cope rather than just going down one route. You know, always think about all the different options that you've got to be able to cope with these symptoms.
I think Ruth is right. Many people, I think that historically women, and I'm speaking very broadly here, and on my own experience, I think that when women go to the doctor, and I'm not putting any doctors down, lots of times when women have, I'm lucky I have a good doctor who listens to me, but I've got lots of friends who had so many symptoms of other things, and it's as if because you're an older woman, like, oh, that'll be your menopause. And I'm like, no. I think I've got shingles. Can I show you a picture? Because I was at the very start of lockdown, I got shingles, and it was a phone call, and I had to take a picture. And I went, no, it's not the menopause. It's not a flush. Please listen. And only because I'm a nippy, insistent pastor that I got this, I took a picture. I went, this isn't my menopause. Can you please? And I'm not saying that all doctors don't listen to all women, but many women and many doctors don't. And I think overworked doctors go, hang on a minute, has she got a problem? Menopause. Next.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for women to say, stop a minute. This isn't a menopause problem. I have a pain inside my vagina and I would rather you investigated that and not just put it into my menopause. And I think that's a very important, because we are told often as women to be quiet, stop nagging, you're moany. And I'm just saying that if you have got symptoms that are worrying you, shout them, use your rage.
Couldn't agree more, Janey. Absolutely. If you've got anything wrong with you, go and see somebody about it. And definitely in that vaginal area, if you've got any abnormalities at all, go and see somebody about it. And exclude all the things before menopause, definitely.
Yeah, I think Ruth and Janey have obviously both kind of touched on it there, and Ruth might be able to tell us more, but as part of the project, before we all started, we obviously did a little bit of research, and we found out that there's actually over 30 symptoms for the menopause. Obviously, not everybody will have all 30. It's going to be a combination. Some people, like Janey, may not have any at all. So I was just wondering how people felt. Did people know that there was over 30 symptoms that you could possibly have, or how much is that common knowledge? I can see
might have shaking of head. Sorry for interrupting. I think I don't think I've sailed through it. I think I have a few symptoms, but not the ones that are most recognisable, is what I'm saying. I had a lot more migraines than I've ever had in my life.
Right.
I think a lot of people, sorry to cut butt in there, I think a lot of people have a lot of psychological, emotional symptoms, and then because they've got so many other pressures going on in their lives, they don't actually attribute those to starting through that perimenopausal stage. And it's only when they maybe start to evolve with their symptoms, or they get more of the physical symptoms, that they think, oh, hang on a minute, I was feeling that rage and that anger and irritability, and maybe it wasn't just my kids that were annoying me. Maybe it was hormonal fluctuations going on there as well. So
I've actually had a question come through the Q&A just as we're talking about symptoms, and Lynn has asked, she says, Janey said that she's always been shouty, and so is she, but her son keeps saying I'm rude and I get angry really fast, so she's wondering how long this will go on for.
Till your son shuts up.
How long's a piece of string? The average is between 4 and 10 years. But so if you say that to some women, they go, what? I've got to experience this for 10 years. But it really is down to each individual experience. It's not, you can't put a time limit on it.
So we have another question that's come through. Just bear with me a second. So Judith has asked, she said, historical issues more like hysterical. Do we think we're getting better at discussing the menopause, especially with all the period poverty discussions? I don't know what everybody thinks about that, whether we think it's more open, or do we think that it's still kind of kept under the radar?
Can I comment on that?
Yes, Vanessa.
I think that we have got better at talking about it generally as a society, but I love the way you talked about it, Janey, and I love the way to shout about the menopause, but there's lots of women out there who don't have that confidence, and for whom it's really, really difficult to talk about the menopause, and who suffer in silence because for them it's really awkward to talk about it, and they maybe share with their best friend. And I would like to raise questions about how we best talk about menopause in a way that we don't make some people feel uncomfortable, and that we don't make assumptions about other women either. That there might be situations where we look at a woman and think, oh yeah, she's kind of maybe the right age, so we're assuming it's the menopause, and that can be quite insulting and can put people off as well. So I'm really interested to hear from other people how we start those conversations best, and how we start it in a way that is sensitive to those individuals who are shy about it or who feel awkward about it, but also gives power to women who want to shout about it and want to lead from the front.
Can I come here again there? Is that all right? I think you raise a really valid point, Vanessa. I think that's absolutely spot on. I think there's so many people who will drag themselves through this period of their lives and just put it with some horrific symptoms and never go and see their GPs about them, particularly, some of the physical symptoms like heavy bleeding, and they just put up with it for years and years and years. And which is really unfortunate. But I think having information sessions, whether that's within the community or whether that's within the workplace, so you're not directing attention onto each individual, and then you're opening up conversations within the workplace as well, making it attainable for people to access information which is accurate and evidence-based. Because I think anybody who knows me knows that I'm really strongly feel about, you know, getting facts out there, and busting all the myths and misconceptions around the menopause is really important. So giving people coping mechanisms as well, and just helping people feel that they can take a little bit more control themselves, which is really important.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Fiona.
I just wanted to say that there's, when I first started getting menopausal and perimenopausal symptoms, I have had to, and still do to a certain extent, have to battle with myself about the stigma that I attach to that. So I really, to begin with, was, judged myself and thought, oh, I can't do things. It's so embarrassing that you're going all red and sweaty in front of all these people that you're talking to or working with. And really, I think that's quite a big battle for people about how they feel about themselves in that situation. And I'm really interested to find ways and to think about, and I suppose it's like when we, because we were probably the generation that talked about periods out loud for the first time as well. Yeah. So we had to find a way to do that. So whatever that was, and whatever we found in ourselves, or whatever, oh, body form for you, we all know that, we remember that, the first, sanitary towel advert and things. So that's a really big thing, I think, is the self-stigmatizing when you have symptoms.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that's a good point. It's not necessarily kind of society, it's kind of your own kind of assumptions and things that you're putting on yourself is something to take on board. Just picking up with something that Ruth said about kind of finding your own kind of support and kind of mechanisms that work for you. We've had a question from Ruth. She says, as someone who can't take HRT, I'd love to know why the answer is always medication and not to treat perimenopause and menopause as a natural process and to treat the symptoms through natural means. And she's put a question mark. So I think she's wondering if, if there's a way that there's natural means that she could be using instead of the HRT.
Oh, can I come in there? Most definitely. I mean, first and foremost, if you go and see any health professional about the menopause, they should always start talking about your lifestyle choices. So your diet plays a huge role, and being well hydrated also, and making sure you really keep on top of your alcohol and caffeine limits as well. All these sorts of things play a massive role. So yeah, absolutely. You don't have to immediately go down the medication route unless you want to. So there's a nutritional blog on my website if people want to look at that, because if you all these buzzwords like phytoestrogens and antioxidants, people wonder what you're all going on about. But definitely look into really making your diet as nutritious and varied as possible, and that will really help the psychological, emotional symptoms as well as all the physical symptoms as well. Yeah, definitely.
So I think the 30 symptoms that I mentioned has really shocked people, because that's what's coming up quite a lot on the Q&A, and people are asking if we can signpost them or list them. So I'm sure that after this event, we will definitely be putting something out there so that people can see the list. We've also had a question about another symptom. So somebody has asked, can anybody recommend anything to help disturb sleep as a result of the menopause? My sleep pattern is all over the place. Is anybody else the same? Don't know if anybody else is having, I can see Susan nodding her head there. So I take it you also had problems with sleep then?
It's actually, it's so frustrating, because with me, it's not the same. It's not all the time I don't sleep. I go through phases where I don't sleep, and I'm tossing and turning, and one leg out the duvet and hanging out, and just about one arm out the window, as Janey said. We've got a Velux above our bed. But then I go through phases, which I'm going through at the moment, and it's great, and I'm literally sleeping 10 or 11 hours a night because I'm just exhausted. But I know that won't last, but it's great at the moment. So yeah.
Oh, and Sharon's got a hand up as well, so I don't know if you're having any.
You're actually lucky I'm still awake, because I'm nodding in front of the night, but I get to sleep, and then I find I'm walking the floors at 5 o'clock in the morning, stuff like that, which is a bit strange, but I do sleep.
Ruth, can I ask a question? One of the weird symptoms, I don't know if it is a symptom, and I've never been able to ask anybody this. When I go to bed and I lie down, suddenly weird parts of my body get itchy. I get an itchy leg, and then I'll get an itchy back, and then my feet will get itchy, and then my knee will get itchy, and then I'll fall asleep, and then I'll wake up with the side of my feet itchy, and I'm like, well, am I allergic to my sausage dog, or is that a symptom?
Yeah, that is a symptom. Formication, not fornication, Janey, formication.
So,
it's very much a common symptom. It's yeah, lots of women get it. It's all your hormones fluctuating around, creating an imbalance, and that can be one of the side effects. So
thank you.
Looking at your diet, looking at hydration levels, and somebody said, you know, lots of people have different ways of coping with it. Somebody said once that they just have a tiny little glass of tonic water before they go to bed. Other people, they find, you know, having a cool shower before they go to bed. Everybody's got different ways of coping, but go down the lifestyle route before sort of slapping on creams or medications and things like that, first of all. Yeah.
So now I realised I've got so many symptoms. Sorry.
It's okay. I'll just something that Fiona mentioned. She mentioned the perimenopause, I think, in the chat a couple of minutes ago, and Lynn is saying that she found that more difficult than the actual menopause, but her GP refused to recognise it, and she's kind of wondering how we can educate more people about the perimenopause. So I suppose if we're talking about how difficult it is to chat about the menopause, never mind the perimenopause. So I've just wondered what everybody thought about that, whether there is anything we could be doing more to educate about it. There's Sarah. Yeah,
I'd never even heard of it until I had it. Until I went to the doctors and said, what's wrong with me? And he said, you're going through the perimenopause. And I said, right, well, can you do anything about it? And he said, no, you've just got to suffer that and go on to the other bit before your hormones aren't at the right level to give you treatment, etc., etc. That was horrendous. I was crying. I was bleeding. It was difficult to go to work. I was taking frequent times off work. I've got through it. Haven't taken anything, but now I'm into the menopause. I'm loving it. It's so much easier than I had in the perimenopause. So there is light at the end of the tunnel for those of you that are suffering from the perimenopause, which is bloody awful.
But isn't it interesting that you hadn't heard of it? Ruth's got a...
Sorry to butt in that. I just wanted to say that's such a shame, Sarah, that you had that experience, because that perimenopausal stage is the most symptomatic stage, and that's when you need care and support and treatment if you're having a really horrendous time. You know, it's just, it annoys me so much when people don't get the right treatment. So, you know, it's I know the British Menopause Society is working tirelessly to try and educate right across the board GPs and nurses so that they're really up to speed with the different stages, and it really is a lottery sometimes. I don't slam GPs at all. They've got a really hard time to cope with lots of different specialities, but if you're not getting a result in your GP surgery or with your practice nurse, then find out who specializes in women's health within the practice and go and see them. Make sure you go and see them, because you definitely need to go. And also a huge misconception is that if you have horrendous symptoms, you want to go down the route of having HRT, then, you know, a lot of people think they have to be fully menopausal before they can actually get that. Absolutely not. You can have that within the perimenopausal stage when you're still having periods of some sort as well. So lots of misconceptions out there.
Vanessa, did you have your hand up there?
Yeah, just very briefly to add on to that, I think Ruth's right. Asking who the right person is to speak in a GP's practice is really helpful. But there's also menopause clinics out there. They're not as well funded as they used to be anymore, but there are and is a network across the whole country that you can access. And I know because in Bristol we've only recently set one up, so there wasn't one until very recently, and so they are re-emerging, and that's a useful way to find somebody who is absolutely expert in dealing with those situations and providing support and help when your GP isn't clued up enough, and they are general practitioners, so they can't be clued up about everything. But I think given that half the population goes through menopause, it is something that should be integrated into the curriculum for GPs when they get trained.
I think actually we just had another question come through about going to the GP. Here we are. So June's saying that she was astonished to find out there were so many symptoms and that she'd had quite a few, and it's making her worry that she might miss something serious because she's putting it down to the menopause. She says, I don't know actually when I'm supposed to go to the doctor, when I'm not, but she's saying obviously having things like this and talking about it more would help, but obviously everybody's experience is different. So again, Ruth, any advice about when, about going to the doctors?
Yeah, well, at the moment, I mean, you are advised to get a phone conversation or video conversation with your GP. And personally, I don't think your symptoms have to be really serious to go and speak to your GP. They're there for a reason. You have to start thinking about doctors and nurses as you would managers in Tesco's or Morrison's or wherever. They've got a job and they're there to do a job, and that their job is to look after you and to provide a service. So never don't go and ask questions, because that's what they're there for, to have support. But if you do go and see your GP, be really, really prepared. So make sure, the more information you can give them, the more help than they can give you. So if you are having problems with your menstrual cycles, or if you're being woken up during the night, if you've got insomnia, or you've got horrendous hot flushes and night sweats, or maybe you've got joint aches, or you've got palpitations, you've got migraines, then write down how often you're having them, write down when they're having, what stage of menstrual cycle you're having them, all these sorts of things, and that can really, really help your GP to help you. And it also helps them to exclude other things that might be of concern, because their problem is that they've got to try and exclude other problems. So things like, if you've got palpitations, is that something to do with cardiovascular problems as well? So they've got to exclude that first. So yeah.
So we've actually had a question come through for Colin. Hi Colin. So we've been asked, what is Colin's experience of the menopause from a male point of view? Oh, you'll just need to go off mute, Colin.
Yeah, my wife and I used to live and work in the Netherlands. I remember an evening class that I took, and all the rest were women, and they were all Dutch, and they chatted to one another in Dutch, now and again giving me a word or two of English just to keep me going. But I was just learning Dutch at that time. We were working away, and one of them turned to me and said in Dutch, Colin, what is the English word for menopause? What is het Engelse woord for overgang? And because it had come up in conversation at home the previous evening, I was able to say, quick as a wink, menopause. And the look on their faces, the blood sort of draining away. Shit, he's been understanding what we've been saying. So, there's something in there. People need a confident forum to talk about things. Maybe the bread baking will help there. Mm-hmm. And there may be a little chestnut or two about nutritional things or techniques that may help. Mm-hmm. But
thank you,
basically,
Colin.
I think it's really important. It seems from this here today, it seems really important to have better discussion forums, more relaxed, where people don't feel they need to be on the defensive and hushed up, and not let the stupid English-speaking person know what's going on. Mm-hmm.
No, I think even just going back to what Janey was saying earlier about her mum, obviously she used the fact that, the men to get out of a sticky situation, but we're obviously, if we're not having these conversations with other women, with our only with our closest friends, perhaps not out with, then how do we start these conversations with men? So Ruth, I don't know if you have any ideas, or if anybody else on the panel has any ideas about how we kind of go about doing it.
Yeah, I mean, some of you'll know I've written a book, Men Let's Talk Menopause, because when I do talks, one of the most commonest phrases that I hear is, gosh, I wish my partner or my work colleagues could hear all this information. That would make my life a lot easier. So I thought, well, I'll produce a little guide for them. But I think the problem for men, particularly in the workplace, is that they need as much information as women do. So say if I've been within the workplace, we've only put talks on like this, like Colin, I don't know how many male people are actually out there amongst the 90 participants we got there. But usually if you put a talk on a mixed talk, you'll maybe get 1 or 2 token males. And they don't attend for various reasons from research. They're either not to attend because they're feeling a little awkward about attending a women's issue, or they'll be sensitive enough to know that maybe women won't want to talk about vaginal issues and all that sort of thing with men attending. So we decided to put on men only talks in various organizations, and these have been fantastic and they've worked really well. They're always really well attended. And, you know, I thought they'd be quite dry evenings or afternoons, but no, they're really well attended, really interactive. You cannot shut them up, and they all go away. Well, when we used to do face-to-face talks, they all used to go away classically in their free samples of vaginal moisturizers. So it's they really, because they want to know. And a lot of people will say to me, gosh, do you sort of tone down your chat? Because anybody who knows me now, I'm very keen on getting all those genitourinary symptoms sorted out. And I was like, absolutely not. We talk about absolutely everything, because it affects them, it affects their relationships, it affects all sorts of things. So yeah, just
Janey,
as much information.
I love that idea, Bruce. My daughter Ashley does stand-up. And she's an award-winning stand-up, and I love that she talks about the mucus plug, she talks about her period, she talks about female masturbation, she talks about these subjects, and the amount of men in the audience who, and it's not for shock value, she went, did anybody here not know that an evil jelly tot fell out your vagina and it looks like that sticky credit card thing? And all the men laugh, and the women are like, I never knew that was a thing. Nobody spoke about it. And I think that, not that we can help, but I love that in comedy, there is no subject barred, and there is younger women coming out and speaking about subjects that my ma would have had the word doodah for everything. And these words and these things are important. And she talks about my menopause on stage as well. She says, as if Janey couldn't get any wilder, and she tells everybody, mum says that she's never suffered the menopause because she's inside it and she doesn't see the whirlwind that we see from the outside. And I'm like, I don't have any symptoms like you're crazy. But I think that the best forum for us, in my part, is that in comedy, there's me, there's Jenny Claire, there's lots of women talking about this on stage, and I think that helps a wee bit. It kind of breaks the barriers down. You know, if every single man, we have a joking comedy amongst all the women, all the female comics. We got a lot of male comics and people sending women unsolicited dick pics, and we send back menopause information to them. But they first of all get a wee leaflet about menopause. And if every single man who sent that is getting some menopause information and a wee call for the police, then I think we're doing a wee bit for society here, is all I'm saying.
Yes, no, I think that's a good idea, just to get the information out there. And as Ruth was saying, having talks and things. Helen's just come through and she said, what would our guest speakers suggest workplace environment should do to make living with menopause at work more understood and easier for the individual having symptoms? Oh, that's Vanessa.
So I find my unmute button first. There's a huge amount of information out there for workplaces, and it's really difficult to generalize because workplaces obviously differ so much. So what is right for a nurse is not the right thing for a construction worker, isn't right for somebody who works in an office. So it really does depend. And I guess you can summarize it as, if you can talk about it openly, say to a line manager in particular, because they have that control and that ability to change the working environment, the working pressure and the working tempo, and the whether people have flexible work, for example, which helps a lot. If you've had a bad night's sleep, being able to maybe start a bit later, work a bit later in the evening. So there's lots of ways in which you can adjust workplaces, but it always depends on actually having to come out first, that you have to tell somebody about it, and that can often be a first hurdle, and that's really difficult. So you almost kind of have to overcome the worst bit first before you can get the help. But if you don't feel comfortable talking to a line manager, for example, there are other ways to go about it. So often occupational health is outsourced, so you can talk to somebody who is not actually within your workplace that you have to carry on working with. Trade unions have done a huge amount of training on menopause, so going to your trade union rep, if you have one, is a really useful route. So trying to find different avenues that don't make you feel uncomfortable in the long term in your workplace is really important.
That's great advice.
Yeah, I mean, that's somebody just put up that their company runs menopause seminars, and a lot of men are attending as it helps them at home as well as in the workplace with female colleagues. So I'm conscious, unfortunately, we've only got about 10 minutes left, and we've still got a lot of questions here. So I'm going to try and run through as many as we can in the time that we've got left.
Can I just say something very quickly? Yes. I don't know if any of the other women, the wonderful women here, watch other women on TV. I watch very closely Nicola Sturgeon because I do her voiceover. There's sometimes when I watch her and I know that she must be wanting to go, shut up, asking the same stupid question over and over again. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't imagine how her workplace must feel if she, not that she is, but if she was going through the menopause. And I watch female politicians very closely, on stage, and I think, they must be ready just to take their shoe off and have a go someday, because they're not listening, and that must be an added difficulty to the pressure. And it's the same as young mothers who are politicians. That added layer of angst makes me very interested in their body language, and you can just see it. They're taking the glasses off, going, right, okay, I'm going to have to calm down before I speak. But yeah, sorry, I just thought I'd bring that up because
like I said, I'll try and get through as many as we have, and I apologise if we don't get through them all. So we've had Tracy. This is following on from something that Fiona said. She was wondering if there are any techniques or methods that can be used to reduce the flushing, as it's really affecting her work. She's feeling horrendously embarrassed, and because there's just so much blood in her face, she feels that she's going to start bleeding from her eyes and her ears. So I don't know if anybody's got any tips.
Can I come in there?
Yes, Ruth.
Yeah. So first of all, for hot flushes and night sweats, definitely want to reduce the intensity and frequency of them. So the key thing is breathing techniques. So thinking about cognitive behavioral therapy, a lot of people think that's all to do with thinking positively, but no, it's all to do with reducing your stress levels. And if you reduce your stress levels, then you're going to reduce the intensity and frequency of that hot flush. So looking into breathing patterns, diaphragmatic breathing can really, breathing through your hot flush or your night sweat can really, really help.
Wow.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then looking at your diet as well, taking all those stimulants out like caffeine, spicy food, things like that. Really look at the triggers for your hot flushes and night sweats and taking those out and making sure you're well hydrated.
And I think you should just, if you're still flushing, you just have to own it. I now just say, I'm just having a flush, and then get over it and move on. It helps me.
So we've had a few things about how people talk about the menopause. So I'm going to kind of group these questions together. So somebody said, do you remember when it was called the change? Other people have said, oh, you get referred to as mad. It's the time of the month, all these kinds of negative words that people are using. So obviously that's come through quite a lot in the Q&A. So how do we get across that it could actually be something quite positive and start celebrating it? I thought that'd be quite a nice way to finish. Oh, there's Sarah.
You can go swimming whenever you like.
Oh, Fiona?
Yeah, I think it's like any other kind of, because I see that as a kind of a form of stigma. It's the language that's used around it, isn't it? And how you talk about yourself and how you talk about symptoms like, mad and all these other phrases. So I think it's about changing language. And I think, so that was really refreshing tonight, when we hear these positive things about it as well, because actually your impression of menopause, or mine was, is all negative, that there's nothing good about it. So celebrating, so finding other language, and when we're having these discussions, talking about it in a different way, I think probably really helps.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I celebrate the fact that I came through a very difficult childhood, and I came through very difficult periods, and then I managed to produce a wonderful daughter, and then my womb is having a wee fair fortnight now, and it's done its job, but I'm still here doing mine, and I find that I'm very grateful to my womb for what it done. It hurt me a lot, but it also saved me as well, and I don't see it as an enemy. And when people say, maybe you get your menopause, and I go, yeah, I don't know what week it is, or I don't know if there's a special date for it, but I think it's a thing that's happened. And I'm dead grateful that I managed to come through my life without any incredibly weird, dangerous life-threatening illnesses. So, I'm here. I'm still a woman. I'm still having fun. I'm still loud. I'm still valid. I don't have to justify my entire life through what my 28-day cycle used to tell me.
I think, Kirsty, you were next.
I was just going to say, I think it's great to hear the amount of kind of external support that's available, but I think as women, we need to change the conversation. How many times when, if you've been fortunate enough to have been pregnant, you walk into the tea room and you announce it. And what happens then is every woman in the room shares their horror stories of being pregnant and the trauma of their childbirth, regardless of who else is sitting in there. If there's some poor guy stuck in the corner, he's sitting there until the whole story of her C-section and stirrups and everything else has come through. Just bide, you caused this. But when we're at the other side of that process, and as Janey was saying, when you're no longer fertile, you're no longer a valid member of society, none of us would walk into a tea room and go, all right, girls, I'm off it now. We wouldn't do it, but why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we walk in and go, 43 HRT and life is fabulous, by the way? But I think we need to treat it differently and not be continuing that process of on the change. No, that's it. I'm on the happy replacement therapy and life's good. And I think we just need to suck up and do that ourselves.
Well, my beautiful daughter is here. Ashley, come and say hi. I've spoke so much about you tonight. This is the girl that mentioned the mucus plug on stage. That woman there, Ruth Doctor, she loved what you did. She's the one that speaks about it and talks about it, and I was telling them all how I don't have a menopause.
Just to say, I'm a nurse, not a doctor. Don't elevate me.
To be fair, a nurse is just an underpaid doctor.
Can I just point out one thing, that men have pelvic floors as well. So don't forget to do your pelvic floors, everybody. Your urinary frequency and leakage, but men have the pelvic floors as well.
And Vanessa's been waiting very patiently, so I'll let you go.
I just wanted to make the observation that in other countries and other cultures, old women are wise women, and I think that's one way to change the dialogue and change the way that we look at menopause, and that this can be a new lease of life where we change the world and change the way that we talk about menopause and as on the side.
I was going to say, Vanessa, I think that's a wonderful way to finish, having wise women. So I'd just like to thank everybody, because that's 8 o'clock. Janey, panel, I just want to say thank you so much for talking to us tonight. It's been a real pleasure. And I think actually we've got so many questions still. I think we could have carried on talking all night and answering everybody's questions. But don't worry, because if anybody in the audience would like to attend some more pause not full stop activities, then we have 2 exciting workshops coming up, Baking and Banter with the lovely Colin, where from the comfort of your own home, you'll be able to bake and share your thoughts and experiences on the menopause. So details of this will all be on our pause not full stop page on our website at on5.com. And you can also stay up to date by joining our new Pause Not Full Stop Facebook group as well, so you can stay up to date with all our information. After tonight's event, you'll see an audience feedback form. It's produced by Carnegie UK Trust and is completely anonymous. The findings will contribute towards the overall evaluation of the programme and help to improve the experience for others. So I just want to say again to the panel and to Janey and to you, the audience, thank you for coming along tonight, and I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your evening.